with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, FA Nation? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Show. We got 5 games coming at you on a Thursday here, James. You did the playbook today. We got quite a bit of news. Tyrese Halliburton not returning tonight for the Indiana Pacers. Pascal Siakam not making his debut for the Indiana Pacers. So they'll be without both of those key players tonight against the Sacramento Kings. We got a nice game total. We got a couple of games with double-digit point spreads. Just a lot to talk about. And it's a 7:30 roster lock here tonight. So a little bit of extra time for everybody to go build their lineups this evening, for news to come out. We do have 2 10 p.m. games on tonight's DraftKings main slate there as well. And we love all of you already in the chat with us here. Des popping in saying we're coming at you live. Albert in the chat saying what's up. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to throw them in the chat here tonight. And then, of course, as always, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a live show. We go here live every day, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Sir James, how are we doing today, man?
Doing well. I mean, the Halliburton news is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Pacers. They also have downgraded Andrew Nembhard today. We already know like half their team's questionable, so that's going to be a nightmare considering that's a 10 p.m. start.
You're killing the man right on top of this already. Do us a favor, Nembhard. Sit out, buddy. Let's give us some TJ McConnell here today, right?
Yeah, and I think that's like pretty much the maybe the story of the day, because like you cannot go into that late night window with no ability to adjust your lines, because if TJ McConnell is the only point guard potentially on this team and Ben Shepherd is the other one, like you have to be able to alter your lines. So Indiana is really the story of the slate. Mathurin was able to do one-on-one stuff yesterday at practice. Neesmith was a full practice. Toppin didn't practice at all. So if I had to guess, Mathurin and Nembhard are the biggest question marks. Neesmith seems like he's going to play. Toppin seems like he isn't going to play. But like the guard room could just be who?
Right.
Like literally Shepherd, Hield, and CJ McConnell. That could be the entire guard room tonight for Indiana. So, there's a lot of news to come. So you're going to have it's a 10 p.m. game, 7:30 lock. So you're going to have to stay hip to the news tonight because that Indiana news is coming out later than lock for sure. 3 teams on a back-to-back tonight. Toronto, we saw they looked really good last night. Interesting note about Toronto tonight, John. And we don't know, and I've been trying to find it. Bruce Brown is not on the injury report tonight for the Toronto Raptors. He also had Jonte Porter switch his number so that Bruce Brown can wear number 11. Right. There's reports that Bruce Brown may, or just because he's off the injury report doesn't mean he's going to play.
Right. Hot commodity,
obviously,
the trade market right now.
Right. He's obviously a hot commodity. It's not like Bruce Brown needs to go out and play in Toronto so everyone's like, oh, this is what Bruce Brown, we know what Bruce Brown can be. He can do a little bit of everything. But obviously, that muddies things up a little bit if Bruce Brown's in, especially to guys like Gary Trent, Dennis Schroeder, probably mostly it would be the extent of who that impacts, but remains to be seen. We'll know probably before the game if in fact Bruce Brown is going to make his debut or not on the injury report. Good sign that he's going to play, but to what extent or if he is, TBD. Knicks on a back-to-back. Josh Hart, second night in a row he's been on the injury report. That's a little interesting, right? Because he played through this injury yesterday, and now he's and had a big game, and now he's again questionable. So obviously something to monitor with Josh Hart. That would be instant boosts to guys like Dante DiVincenzo and Quentin Grimes would probably be the 2 biggest beneficiaries. But interesting to see Hart on the injury report, and then Minnesota in the late night hammer. Fully clean injury report. You and I kind of talked about it on the show this morning that maybe we see Mike Conley pop. Nope. Only G-League guys showing up on the injury report. So fun slate. A lot of news to come, though, John, because that Indiana 10 o'clock news where TJ McConnell may or may not be the best per dollar play of the slate is what matters most.
Agreed. I got a lot of you guys in the chat. Love to see DePrince popping in here saying yo. Justin H as well. Comments in here about the blowouts here. DePrince saying the blowout games have been killing him. Dez saying the same thing. The games that have double-digit point spreads here tonight, Washington, New York. New York is a 12-point home favorite in this one, over a 234 game total. Minnesota is a 12.5-point home favorite, a 214 game total in that one there. Indiana, Sacramento, not quite getting to the double-digit mark. Sacramento is still an 8-point home favorite here, but a nice 245.5 total there. 244 in the OKC Utah game. That one should be pretty fun from a DFS standpoint. Then Chicago, Toronto just 2-point home underdog in this one with a 228 total. So if you're looking to avoid the blowouts or maybe kind of pick and choose where you want to go with these blowout games, New York and Minnesota both have double-digit spreads here as home favorites. The Kings are an 8-point home favorite here tonight. Jumping in, we go position by position here. Targeting our overall spend ups. Just two guys up in over 10K today. That is Sabonis and SGA. SGA is your top price point guard on the slate, going up against Utah. And as we just said, that game sitting there with a 244 game total. Utah, a 3.5-point home underdog in this one. And you and I have kind of talked a little bit about Utah lately. One, they're 16-4 at home against the spread this year. They're 8-2 overall, and 15 over the last 10, and 15-5 overall at home this year is Utah here. While OKC on the road, just 10-9 against the spread. They're 5-5 overall against the spread their last 10 games, and 11-8 overall on the season on the road. So, would you do a little sprinkle on Utah, maybe money line tonight, or plus 3.5, the way they've been playing some basketball lately? Or do you still think the Thunder carry it here?
It's really hard to beat Utah and Utah. Like, if you look historically, I don't know when the last time that they finished under 500 at home. And this year, they just had a tough road stretch. They came out pretty much unscathed outside of that Boston game. And now they have this massive home stretch. This was supposed to be the second leg of a back-to-back. Right. It's not, because obviously with everything that happened with the Warriors. But, this is a relatively really fun game. What would I do? This is a tough situation because you and I love betting OKC in tight spreads. I think that's been something that you and I have profited off a lot. Betting OKC against you, but Utah at home has become one of our favorite targets, and deservedly so. They're very good at home. Spread them out. This is two teams that are just spreading their offenses out and getting whatever they want, wherever they want, really. So I would sprinkle a little Utah in on this game, just given their recent success, and a direct correlation to the new starting lineup with Colin Sexton entering as the starting point guard has followed. They've lost just 3 games since December 14th. That's when Colin Sexton entered the starting lineup. So, I'd sprinkle some Utah. That would. Now, in terms of DFS, that doesn't mean I wouldn't get to Shea, because I think Shea is an excellent play. It's a really good pace environment, 2 teams that are top 10 in pace. Utah has been better defensively of late. They're not overall a great defensive team. When you just talk about the entire season, take sample size for what it's worth. It is interesting to see them being, this good defensively, considering Walker Kessler's not playing as much as he used to, because he's largely regarded as their best defender in general. But I'm okay getting. He has not had 3 bad games in a row. He hasn't had 2 bad games really in a row until this recent stretch, and he went into that back-to-back with a knee ailment, right?
Yeah, there was a knee strain going into the Lakers game. Played them both. Played 34 minutes in both, and as you mentioned, not typical performances that we've come to see out of SGA here. Third straight road game. Technically, I get they didn't move anywhere for LA, but still, third straight game where they're traveling, staying in hotels, doing whatever. Here, it also kind of has to play into a factor, I think. So again, it's nothing to say you can't go play SGA in this spot against Utah. It is a 244 game total, but we've been riding more like Jalen Williams lately, at his price point, which is, $3,000 cheaper than SGA. And we've been getting that, that 40 plus fantasy point production. There is Sabonis. There are more. It's obviously a fair and balanced build slate because there's only 2 guys up over 10K tonight. So you don't really have those, Jokic, Lucas, Giannis is the kind of need money to spend up for. So roster construction is going to be pretty interesting here tonight. We know there's some obvious value. If you go look at the rostership percentages, draft percentage forecaster that we have out on Fantasy Alarm, I know that was updated just a little while ago by James. When you're looking at projected ownership here today, obvious value plays you find yourself getting to, but then you do see sort of like upper 8K guys getting love, like Jalen Brunson, like Julius Randle, like Anthony Edwards. SGA is your highest price top spend, but still coming in at less than 20%. So lineup builds will be pretty interesting tonight for sure.
Yeah, lineups will be. And to your point about the SGA and Jalen Williams thing, it's like, one of them is the cover of the playbook, one of them's not.
Right.
So
yeah. And as we say all the time, when there's like an ascension from another player, that at times comes at the cost of someone like an SGA, right? If SGA is not scoring over 30, that's because 24 points are going to Jalen Williams now that weren't necessarily going there earlier in the season. So again, if you want to build some lineups around SGA tonight, perfectly fine. No one will never tell you not to do that. Dude's an absolute monster, MVP, top 5, play this year. But then you go down and you have De'Aaron Fox at 91 against the Pacers. You have Jalen Brunson here at $8,500. Got Anthony Edwards at just an incredibly wrong price tag at $8,400 against Memphis. Quickly, if you wanted 7K, like that group right there, all still very strong, very solid. 2 of those games, obviously, with double-digit point spreads to be a bit concerned about. But we've seen Brunson play 35 minutes in blowouts before, so Tibbs don't care.
I would say too. I'm just gonna float this out there. I'd be a little concerned with Indiana staying competitive if like a bunch of their guys are ruled out. Like if Mathurin can't play, Nembhard can't play. Like I like TJ McConnell, dude. He over like a 48-minute span, he's gonna get cooked by De'Aaron Fox more often than he's not. Like I know TJ McConnell's like a good defender, but he's a little guy, and he's like at times he's gonna be chasing around Malik Monk, who's like 6'5".
He's good at getting steals. I don't know if he's good at getting. I don't know if he's a good defender, right? He's good at getting in passing lanes.
That is true. And so like I do kind of worry about Indiana if they're not at don't have a guy like Mathurin who can create his own shot, because they won't have a lot of shot creation without. I mean, we saw it the other day in Utah. They got literally torched, and Nembhard was in that game, and Mathurin was in that game, and it didn't matter because Sacramento could do the same thing. Sacramento can shoot the lights out of the ball, and it's over in 3 quarters unless you're unless they're facing Phoenix. But Indiana won't have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker to score and Chimezie Metu to score 22 points in the final 8 minutes. So there is a slight concern for me. I'm okay getting De'Aaron Fox. He's been really good over the last 2 games. The scoring has been way up, 32-33. We're a little worried about the peripheral stats. It's hard to get peripheral stats when Malik Monk and Domantas Sabonis are just doing what they're doing on a nightly basis. But those have gone up. He's 50 shots in the last 2 games for De'Aaron Fox. Is like super hard to ignore. Top, obviously, team in pace that they're facing. Second overall in their bottom 3 defense as well. So great matchup for Fox. Jalen Brunson this year, or in the month of January, John, has averaged 15 potential assists per game. That is direct correlation to OG being brought over. Sure. I'm not saying that is like that's a lot of potential assists per game. That's the 3rd most in the NBA since the start of January. And that just gives you a deeper bag for Jalen Brunson to have a ceiling, because we know the scoring is going to be there. Like we've seen it pre-Anunoby trade and post-Anunoby trade.
Right here in the same matchup. They won by 16. He played 35 minutes in that game at 33-8. So
right. And you just need Washington to keep it relatively close. Because if it's relatively close, like the Houston game from yesterday, he's playing big minutes. Like if it's 20, then maybe we get low 30s minutes. If it's like 12, I mean, it was like a 14-point game, and Isaiah Hartenstein played 41 minutes last night, and OG Anunoby played 44 minutes. Like, if Washington keeps it in that spread or around
keep it within 10,
then Brunson's
right?
Dude. I mean, Brunson's just gonna play. I don't even think it has to be 10. I think it has to be like 14.
Well, that's what I said.
And
Like they beat Philly by 30 here. You've still played 32 minutes in that game, right? So like Tibbs, we know Tibbs is one of our favorite coaches in the NBA for this reason. His guys play all the minutes they can handle. This one they were up, I think 40, and they just you're like, all right, we're not going to push it against Portland here. But if it's within 12 going into like the fourth, like he's going to get the minutes, and maybe tonight's chalkiest play of the slate will have something to do with Washington keeping it in. Close in this game here as well. We'll talk about that as we move across the board. Mania Quickly's here. IC3 wants to know what happened to Quickly. Why did he disappear in the fourth? What's your thoughts there? My thoughts are Gary Trent didn't miss a shot. And when Gary Trent's out there just knocking down buckets, it's hard for other people to score. What's your feelings here on Quickly at 7K?
So like it was a blowout, and he played basically all of the third quarter. When you go to Popcorn Machine, popcornmachine.net, John will probably drop that in the chat. So Quickly played about 10 minutes in the third quarter, and then started the fourth quarter, played the first 3 minutes. It was a 20-point game. He subbed out. All the starters subbed out around the 2:21 mark. RJ Barrett played a little bit more because he had those free throws. Art Quickly would have checked back in if they were in any danger. Like Scotty Barnes checked in to start the fourth. Barrett checked in the middle of the fourth after not starting the fourth. So like it was just basically a rotation pattern for Emmanuel Quickly. He would have closed that game if it was.
Sure.
So I'm not worried about it. He's been playing mid-30s minutes. You're right. Like Gary Trent obviously had a lot to do with that. But also they just like played Schroeder, and I don't think that would have stuck in him. Like, because Schroeder wasn't really playing all that much. Schroeder kind of got iced because I think Schroeder lost out minutes because Gary Trent was so good. Quickly just lost out and blow. That's basically.
And he still played 30 minutes and had 41 fantasy points. So not like
almost triple double.
Not like he disappointed here. We do, one of the obviously more competitive games on the board is just one of the lowest game totals in Chicago, Toronto. Kobe White's right there at $6,900. Obviously a little price down from him from what he's been. A couple of, down quotation mark performances for him, given the run that he was on. But you did like this because this is a pace-up spot for Chicago. Where does Kobe White rank for you when it comes to, their DeRozan, Vucevic, Levine quadrant that they got going on here in Chicago now?
So I've stolen your idea that you did in the playbook the other day where you just listed Bulls. I've now done this twice.
Okay.
I'm completely stealing it from you.
That's fine.
Because it's very hard to decipher the four, right? Because it's such a teeter-totter, which one's having a good game and which one's not. And I think more often than not, Kobe White's going to be the oddball out who can blow up because his shooting has been so much better this year than it has in years past. Like, he's also like not going to be as ball dominant when DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are sharing the floor with him. And when Vucevic needs touches in the post, right? Like that's tough for Kobe White to like really operate. He would be third or fourth for me. I like DeRozan's matchup the best tonight. Toronto hasn't defended forwards all too well this year. Emmanuel Quickly can be a very good defender. Don't love Kobe White. I'm okay getting to his price point. He is the best price point of the bunch. So if you want to get there, if you want to play it from that narrative, like that standpoint, it's fine. He would rank fourth, maybe third. Obviously, the trusting Levine right now is impossible because we've had a 60-point ceiling and a 20-point floor in 4 games, and he's done like each of those twice. So like, what do you really get from Levine?
We've talked a lot of point guards so far, kind of just to work our way down to, I think, the 2 guards we want to play tonight. And that's Blake Monk and Colin Sexton. Monk 64, Sexton 62. Both of them have point guard, shooting guard eligibility. Would you rank Sexton or Monk 1-2 here?
I would go Sexton 1. So since December 14th, which was the game that he was first implemented into the starting lineup, 1.28 fantasy points per minute that's second on the team, only behind Larry Markkinen. 29.1% usage rate, second on the team, only behind Jordan Clarkson, and it's 0.4 percentage points behind, right? So I would go Colin Sexton 1. Dude, his last 5 games, he has averaged 22 minutes per game.
Yeah.
Because they've been blowouts. He's also averaged 35.8 fantasy points or DraftKings points per game in that span because he's an assassin. This is like Cleveland Colin Sexton all over again. Utah is just spacing the floor, letting Colin Sexton get to his spot, and then if he kicks to an open shooter, he kicks an open shooter. If he shoots his like little mid-range or to the basket, he does that too. And so I love Colin Sexton. I think the game environment is fantastic for Colin Sexton here, obviously at home, in probably the most competitive game of the slate. Hopefully, we thought that about a couple games yesterday, and that was the case. And that's kind of someone brought it up earlier about the blowouts, Des. And so I lean Colin Sexton, not to take away from Malik Monk because I wrote both of them up in the playbook. Malik Monk, dude, he's really good peripherally on nights where he doesn't shoot the ball well. And then when you get the nights where he shoots the ball well, he's going to break a slate where he has 60 fantasy point upside. I mean, he had 11 rebounds and assists last game. On a night, he goes 3 or 5 for 16 from the floor. They're going to play him over Harrison Barnes. They're going to play him over Kevin Huerter. I've talked to you a bunch recently. They're using him as the backup point guard behind De'Aaron Fox. So he's like, we're going to consistently see minutes 30, 29 plus basically every game because he's playing backup 2 positions and he closes games. So I love both these guys.
The shot attempts for Monk are obviously huge, right? I mean, that's what we talk about a lot of times with guys who come in off the bench. If they're going to come in off the bench, you need them active, right? You can't have them just kind of floating around there, standing in corners, being a 3-and-D guy. Malik Monk gets on the floor to score. He gets on the floor to handle the basketball and be the offense for the second unit. And then, like you said, when he closes these games, he's out there with Fox and Sabonis. There are times where he's the one taking over the game. He's the one, he's not deferring to the other two. He's the one with the ball there. So, he's probably the better shooter overall. Fox definitely better slasher. Monk's the guy that will take those outside shots. So, both of those guys obviously plugs for lineups. Sexton expected to be in the more competitive game. Monk potentially in a blowout game here. What are your thoughts when it comes to guys below them? We talked in a shooter a little bit. There's Alex Caruso down here. Luke Kennard now has point guard eligibility. Keontae George. Like, what's your value grouping looking like at point guard tonight?
I'm kind of out on Schroeder after seeing yesterday's the way he was used. I mean, like 27 minutes is fine.
What's wrong with 27 minutes?
It's not that it's just I think that he loses out some minutes too quickly in that game if that game's more competitive where they need to go back to quickly. Also, there is the elephant in the room about Bruce Brown that if Bruce Brown plays, like I do think that hurts Schroeder and Bruce and Gary Trent specifically because we know Scotty Barnes isn't losing out on anything. We know Quickly and RJ Barrett, their roles have been really solidified since coming over. So until we know more about what the expectation for Bruce Brown is, which I do keep trying to research, and there's not anything definitive on the Bruce Brown front other than he's wearing number 11 because Jonte Porter switched his number.
At least we'll get that first though. It's a 7:30 start time.
We will. So for now, if Bruce Brown is active but doesn't play, Schroeder's fine. I don't like the price increase. I would rather it's more so I'd rather just play Gary Trent at 4,300, same eligibility, $1,400 cheaper. He's starting. He played more minutes. We know, obviously, 10 for 13, 8 for 9 is very hard to repeat. But Gary Trent has also been a really good scorer for a really long time. So
I almost feel like he's the one that gets bit by Bruce Brown more than anybody else. Because he's the shooting guard, small forward swing, right? And that's what Brown can play.
Yeah, but Brown could also handle the ball. So where Schroeder is handling the ball, Brown played point guard for Denver last year when games where Jamal Murray missed, right? And he's also handled the ball in Indiana, and we've seen the inability to get McConnell extra run when Bruce Brown was there because it's they're clashing. It's two guys who are not the best shooters who also handle the ball. that's kind of what Dennis Schroeder does, where Gary Trent will always have that, I can space the floor better than most guys in his back pocket.
Okay. Well, obviously McConnell would be a guy in if Nembhard gets ruled out.
Oh, yeah.
Where are you on Caruso, Kennard, George?
Caruso, Kennard, George. I like Kennard. I like the usage for Kennard. As the point guard of this team the last 3 games, he started 29, 33, 32 minutes. Obviously he's not like flashing a massive ceiling at 5,300, but also 23 fantasy points playing point guard, 2 for 9 shooting. We know Luke Kennard can make 5 threes in a game, and that changes the narrative on that outing. So I like Kennard. I would also honestly throw Nembhard into the mix at 58. I know he's obviously been added to the injury report with a thoracic spine sprain, which is interesting that just showed up. Maybe he slept in his bed wrong or something. But I would probably include Nembhard because even in games that Halliburton's been out, like he's been clearly the 1A to the 1B, at least in terms of minutes to TJ McConnell. Sure. So if Nembhard does play, I'd be okay getting Andrew Nembhard as well.
Moving on over to shooting guard here then. We talked Anthony Edwards briefly. You have Zach LaVine at 71. Jordan Clarkson is $6,800. RJ Barrett, $6,600. Kind of that top tier. I linked my underdog pick and plays in the chat. RJ Barrett and Colin Sexton are in that article here today. Check the Colin Sexton over 19.5 points scored. Guy's gone over that total and playing at least 20 minutes in 9 of the last 10 games, and we're expecting him to see a bit more than 20 minutes here this evening, we assume. And then the other one is RJ Barrett. He took over the 27.5 points and rebounds. He's been a fantastic rebounder since coming to Toronto here, and we know the scoring opportunities are certainly there now with Siakam out of the picture. Barrett was one of our favorite players this morning. I can't imagine much has changed for you here.
No. They're playing undersized, kind of. Now Siakam's gone. Like, they went with the Gary Trent lineup. They're just playing smaller, and they moved Scotty Barnes down. It's a positionless team with, like, Jonte Porter, like, clearly playing center, and then Thad comes in. But, like, even Thad, he's 6'9", right? So Thaddeus Young is your 6'9" center. I like RJ Barrett. The scoring has been elite. The usage has been elite. Fantasy points per minute, 1.2 fantasy points per minute without Siakam on the floor this year. So it's really hard not to like RJ Barrett, 6,600 shooting guard, small forward, elite eligibility. I'd honestly like him and Quickly, both shooting guard. Like, I'd rather play Barrett. Sure. It's really close with Malik Monk because I think Monk's matchup is obviously better.
You could play all 3 of them. I mean, Barrett's
could play all 3 of them. You could play all 3 of them if you're doing a fair and balanced build. So yeah, RJ Barrett definitely the top dog in this team.
Yep. You mentioned obviously it's a pace spot for Chicago. Levine's there at $7,100. We have no qualms getting to that. Clarkson 68. We know the scoring upside that he can bring to the table. With it being a smaller slate, like the depth does sort of like fall off a bit here. Des asking, do we even trust Bruce Brown if he's active tonight? Definitely risky. The one thing with Bruce Brown, like, he has moments. Obviously, he's coming off 46 fantasy points and 40 fantasy points here with the Pacers. But there's a lot of other nights where, like, he plays minutes and just kind of floats around and not the primary focal point of a team whenever he's on that roster. So there's certainly some risk. The $5,400 price tag isn't terrible here. Was there a value or mid-range shooting guard that you kind of had an eye on here?
It's not Brown.
Sure.
I'll tell you that. I think there's just a lot of there's too much competition for me in Toronto, which is why he does make sense for a trade candidate. And Masai Ujiri, their GM, kind of like alluded to that today, where like he said he wasn't done trading. We've already heard that Bruce Brown's rumored to, everywhere else in the league. So I'm not going to Brown. It would be Kennard, who's point guard eligible. It would be Gary Trent, who's point guard eligible. I think this is a pretty shallow position. Fortunately for us, like a lot of these guys that we talked about at point guard, you can use at shooting guard. Also, I will say Indiana's really, really nicely priced on FanDuel. If you want to play like Ben Mathurin is 5,500 if he were to suit up. I think that's like kind of crazy for his upside if like guys are out. Nembhard's 54 on FanDuel. Like Heald is 59. Like I would play any of those guys on FanDuel. DraftKings, it's harder to get to. Only other name I would possibly shout out is if Mathurin and Nembhard are ruled out, Ben Shepherd, $3,300. Yes, he played 25 minutes in a blowout. He was also in the rotation to start that game. Like he didn't start, but he was off the bench early. They traded Jordan Nwora. They traded Bruce Brown. No Halliburton, possibly no Mathurin. Like there is no reason to think Ben Shepherd wouldn't play 30 minutes in this game if Nembhard and Mathurin were ruled.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on over to small forward, we do have the question if we had a lean on Vince or Sexton. Obviously, Vince Williams or Sexton. I'm guessing, is that a FanDuel question, Cam? I know Vince Williams, I think, was shooting guard eligible over on FanDuel. But we're in on some of these plays here in Memphis tonight. Williams being just $6,100 now. Coming off 2 big-time games. He's shooting more than he was earlier in the year when they had more active players. We know he's been aggressive on the board. He's filling out the stat sheet. DraftKings. So is that a util?
That's a util. That's got to be a util question. That's a util question.
What's your thoughts on Sexton versus Vince Williams here?
It's Sexton for me. I think the usage rates have been too good for Colin Sexton to pass up on. I know the minutes are obviously more secure with Vince Williams, but and the usage rate over the last 2 games has been good for Vince Williams. The problem is he's not this efficient offensively, and he wasn't even efficient in that Knicks game. 5 for 13, 1 for 7 from 3, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. He's taken 18 free throws the last 2 games. That's obviously played a large role for Vince Williams. I like the Colin Sexton usage. I like the game environment way better in that Utah game. Not a lot of interest in like Memphis is interesting because like Jaren Jackson has such big splits without Bane and Ja and all these guys. But it's obviously an incredibly tough spot, and he's going to have to guard Karl-Anthony Towns, who has been really good and could put him in a blender and foul trouble pretty quickly. And Minnesota's just a really good team. I'll say Colin Sexton. Not that I totally dislike Vince Williams, but I'll definitely lean Sexton in that spot.
Just threw the playbook in there. Copied everything that was posted, but there's the playbook there for everybody who wants to check it out. Posted in our Discord earlier today, but there it is. For those of you who want to take a look at it. Camden says he's got Barrett, so he can play either shooting guard, small forward there. So yeah, that's fine. We like them all. All those guys are fine. But we do also like some of the guys at the top, notably Lauri Markkanen is still $8,300. Not really sure why. Back-to-back 50 fantasy point games. Supposed to be a close matchup here. He spaces the floor. The rebounding's been really encouraging lately after spells of him not rebounding. I think that's a lot to do with Kessler not really being in the rotation nearly as much. So $8,300 for Lauri Markkanen tonight. A pretty big spot for him here.
Yeah, it feels like FanDuel has him over 9K. That's where he should probably be, over 9K. 50-plus fantasy points in back-to-back games. He's had 48 DraftKings points in 5 of 6. And I talked about the Colin Sexton implementation in their lineup, like back on 12-14. And Markkanen's numbers have just not fallen off. 1.29 fantasy points per minute, 25.6% usage rate over that span. So, yeah, he's just been great. And you're right. Like, they're spacing the floor, and John Collins is like largely playing a lot of minutes at the center, and Kelly O is like shooting threes and not like near the rim all the time. So at least Markkanen sometimes as the big man on the floor, like, and just so the peripheral stats have definitely ticked up, and obviously he's an elite scorer, and even on like smaller scale, the like assists have been there more for Lauri Markkanen. I think that does have to do with the way Utah's running their offense and just spacing everything so well. So it's hard not to love Markkanen. I also love the guy right below. This is a really tough position for me because I think the top 4 guys in this spot are really strong. Like I love Scotty Barnes against the Bulls. He's had really good games against them this year. And And the price just stands out the most. $8,100 is the cheapest he's been.
So for a guy that was over 9K for a lot of this season, outside of like the first week or so, cheapest he's been since November 1st at $8,100 here. So good value. And he mentioned, obviously the matchup against Chicago here. Below him, you have DDR, a little revenge game, pace up spot at $7,300. And then, as I mentioned, when we opened the show, we've been playing, and you have been on it more. The Jalen Williams train right now is something we don't really want to get off of.
Yeah, so in 7 of his last 8 games, he's had 35 plus DraftKings points. He's coming off 25 plus points in 2 straight. And then over that span of the 8 game span, he's averaged 1.25 DraftKings points per minute and has a 23% usage, which is way up from season averages. It's just like, you think about the way that defenses are going to attack OKC, all the attention is going to SGA. All the attention is going towards Chet. Is OKC now getting Jalen Williams in matchups against like 3rd and 4th best defenders on a team? Like there's no chance against Jalen Williams, because if Jalen Williams was on a different team, he's scoring 20 something a night. This version of Jalen Williams, at least, is scoring 20 something a night. And so yeah, small forward, power forward, really good pace environment. Love Jalen Williams. I also love DDR 73, as you mentioned. Pretty good spot.
Who do you think enters OKC's lineup if Dort's ruled out tonight?
Casey Wallace.
Yeah, so...
maybe. I mean, I guess that's like they started, because if you remember the other day, they benched Lou Dort to start the second half, and they started Casey Wallace. As much as we want Isaiah Joe to be that guy, it has not been Isaiah Joe this year. It's largely been Casey Wallace. Could it be Isaiah Joe? Maybe. Isaiah Joe's played pretty well the last few games, and we know how good of a floor spacer he can be. My guess would just be Casey Wallace, because it's been.
If Mathurin and Nembhard are out, how appealing is someone like Buddy Hield tonight? Like, he could take 25 shots.
If the game stays competitive.
Or not. Like, they may not just have enough bodies to completely bench him, right? Like,
well, they do, because then you can get into like the weeds where you play like Shepherd and Brown and Jerice Walker. And
sure, I guess he's more of a swingman guard, right? Like, Shepherd would maybe play anyways with Nembhard out and guys like that, right? Like, Mathurin and Nembhard are out. Their rotation's smaller anyways when it comes to their backcourt here. At least early shot attempts would likely go towards Buddy Hield in this one.
So looking at their, they have all these G League guys listed questionable too on the latest injury report. Actually, let's get the 5:30 update, because I have, I'm going to say it like this. If Wong, Brown, Toshibwe are all like listed in for this game, I have a feeling we're going to get a G League game today for Indiana.
I mean, like, Toppin, Neesmith, Nembhard, and Mathurin are all questionable. If they all get ruled out, like, Hield's gonna have to play.
I mean, he's definitely gonna play, but it's just, again, that is like, it's like the situation with Brooklyn to a lesser extent. Like, they could just let the G League kids play, because they're not going to run out of stamina. You're not going to put Buddy Hield in a game that's like 30, if it's like a 30-point game. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm also just playing devil's advocate here. There's a chance that all those guys are out, and Indiana has no chance, because De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis exist in the world.
Everybody has a chance against the Kings.
I guess that's.
They just gave up the biggest lead in like NBA history. No, I hear you. I'm just asking again, the way he's priced at, if everybody's out, those shot attempts certainly could be him there. We like Williams Jr., obviously, the way he's been playing, and the minutes have been there. Not really buying in on the OG price still. I don't know if I still feel like he's a little bit too expensive for me. If Hart gets ruled out, DDB is at the same sort of price tag for him. What's your overall thoughts here?
I don't love this tier of basketballers. Aaron Neesmith would be interesting at 49 if he's active, but we would need like, I just feel better about Indiana if like Nembhard and Mathurin play, just in general, just to stay competitive. So Neesmith is fine. If Dort is out, Isaiah Joe does will get a few extra minutes, I'm sure. Whether that's like impactful enough to get to a $4,400 price tag. Of course, we get like the Isaiah Joe game at 4,500 when he was like 1% rostered and nobody like even thought about clicking his name against the Clippers. Quentin Grimes would be another guy that
I know you saw the report as like NBA trade rumors or something like that, saying that the Knicks are trying to package him, Fournier, and a first-round pick to improve their positioning. And like, well, you basically made both of those guys worthless by not playing Fournier ever, and then benching Grimes, until you made those recent moves here. So I'd be curious to see what kind of package the Knicks could get for those players, but certainly something to be on the watch for. Any other small forwards down here for you?
Nothing I see.
Power forward then Julius Randle, $8,800, Kuzma, 86. They're going up against one another here. Obviously, it's a smash play for Randle. If you think this game can hang, love the price, love the ceiling, giving you 50. Went for 57 in this exact matchup where they won by 16. He played 38. Pretty sure we were on him that night as well because I don't see who's stopping Julius Randle in this spot.
Yeah, it's a smash spot for Randle. It's been good against them twice this year, with the second time being obviously better. 31, 8-4 last night, 34 minutes. He's like the only one who didn't get like fully extended on the Knicks last night, 34 minutes. It's kind of light for Julius Randle and the rest of the starting lineup. So yeah, as long as this game stays competitive, you should see another mid to high 30s minutes game out of Julius Randle. And that's the entire Knicks side, right? Like if the game stays competitive, Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle both can go for 50 and they can coexist and do that. But if it doesn't stay competitive and it's a Portland situation because Washington doesn't have a center that like, we'll talk about, again, like you said, we'll talk about their center room in a second. One of them are at power forward, one of them center only, but it could be really ugly for Washington really early if those centers don't hold up, because they like Daniel Gafford's good at blocking shots. They already allow the most fantasy points per game to opposing centers. So now what are they going to do when they don't have a traditional center? I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. Towns 8K here, Triple J's at 76, as we mentioned. Crazy usage numbers, but not a great spot for him there. And then all the guys we've discussed already. Keegan Murray, one we haven't. You just got to worry about a blow, but it would be a great spot for him here tonight.
Bruce Brown available to play.
There you go.
Josh Hart is out.
There you go. What do you make of it?
So for the Knicks, Josh Hart's absence, I assume we're going to get extended run for Quentin Grimes. I assume we're going to get extended run for Dante DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo only played 19 minutes last night with Josh Hart playing 30. Right. So immediately DiVincenzo likely sticks. Grimes probably 20. Maybe you see a little Evan Fournier. I think that's like what you see. So a little boost to DiVincenzo for sure. Definitely a little boost to Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes is going to get some blowout run too. Sure. If this game gets out of hand, we know he can make shots. So possibly like I'm okay getting to Quentin Grimes.
DDD for me, I think, is one of the plays that I would consider going to. I wish, the price is obviously what it is.
Yep.
You mentioned, took the hit in minutes, but lately it's been pretty damn good. I like this spot for him against the Wizards. So I don't mind going Dante DiVincenzo here for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, I don't know why Tibbs doesn't find him more minutes to begin with. I know we talked about this yesterday. They love Josh Hart.
Well, that's just what it is. They like Josh Hart, and he plays tight rotations, and he plays the starters a lot of minutes. There's not going to be a lot of room for that. But you take that guy out of the equation, now you're getting 30 minutes. We know he likes him more than Quentin Grimes, so
well.
So the run's certainly going to be there for him. Do you give any look at Denny? Do you give any look at Keegan here? John Collins, Jalen Smith at $5,400. Jordan Nwora also available to make his debut tonight. I don't think that will do too much, except take Chris Boucher's minutes probably.
And Kyra Lewis also available for the Raptors. He was part of that three. He was a part of the 3-team trade.
Just the giveaway to make money work.
Yeah, it was to get under the luxury tax for New
Yeah.
Orleans. So I do. I mean, like you have to assume Brown's in the rotation. I don't know what Nwora is in this rotation. Maybe he's their backup four. Maybe he's not. Dude, the Brown piece hurts
It wouldn't
for.
shock me if he started. I mean, listen, they started quickly and Barrett right away. First time they got him in there.
So what is your starting lineup? They just take Trent out of the starting lineup?
Yeah.
So it's quickly Brown, Barrett, Barnes, and Jonte Porter.
Sure.
And then you have Trent and Schroeder coming off the bench. That could work.
That was Trent and Schroeder were coming off the bench before. So
Yeah. Imagine going to Gary Trent and be like, "Hey, I know you hit 8 of 9 from 3 last night, but you're back to the bench tonight."
if you're trying to flip Bruce Brown, wouldn't you start him and try to give him minutes to show he's got some worth here?
No, because I think Bruce Brown's already showed what he's like.
Probably true.
He won NBA Finals last year. He was like the 6th man. Like he doesn't have anything to show. The worry more so, I think it's like, don't get Bruce Brown hurt.
Sure.
That's why I was like a little uncertain if he was going to be available or not, because it's like, don't get him hurt if you want.
It just obviously shows they don't have anything immediate on the table here, and they gotta play some guys here. So
Exactly.
Back to power forward. Where are you doing in this 6K below range?
Towns 6K and below range. Keegan Murray is definitely in play. You mentioned you give a little shout to Denny. He's tournaments. Same thing we said yesterday. John Collins, if this game stays competitive, we saw him max out at 34 minutes against the Lakers. Now he had a really, really good game, and that's like he is contending with like Walker Kessler and Kelly Olynyk for minutes. But we've seen in recent games that have been competitive, it's 24 plus. It's anywhere from 24 to 34. Obviously, a wide range of outcomes, but John Collins was just 6K last slate. Now he's 5,500. So I would give him a look in tournaments. Not a core play for me, but definitely in play for tournaments. Jalen Smith is interesting if everyone sits for Indiana. Toppin, I assume, is out. Then we get to like the value, and it's GG Jackson at 4K is obviously AK Gregory Jackson on DraftKings. He's GG
cover of our live stream here today.
I think there's just in any scenario that plays out tonight, GG Gregory Jackson is playing big minutes because there's obviously a very live scenario where they get blown out because they're going into Minnesota. What weird, by the way, 10 o'clock game there. Pretty weird start time. I know it's a TNT game, but like kind of weird.
Why? Because it's a TV game.
It's a TV game. 12.5 point spread, 214 total. Like just not the best game environment, but like he's in the rotation. Played the final 16 minutes of the game. Was in the game in the first half. Was really good. He played closed over Zaire Williams. And if this game blows out, are they not going to play a second round draft pick from this year on a 2-way deal that like he's 19 years old? They're trying to develop. Like it's, so I think there's really no scenario. And you kind of saw that this morning. He was like middling ownership. And then the latest update, he's like the second highest rostered player of the slate. No surprise because people are like, oh, right. Like in pretty much every scenario, GG Jackson is going to play. Now it's all about efficiency for him, right?
Sure.
He's 6 for 9 and 9 for 14 from the field the last 2 games, 7 for 12 from 3. He scored 20 actual in back-to-back games. He doesn't need to be like overly efficient at 4K. Johnny's over 6K on FanDuel.
Yeah.
He's $6,400 on FanDuel.
It's a lot of money.
That's
I like the rebounds, like the block shots, like the steals. So he's being active, but he definitely has to hit his buckets to get you that value versus just the 20 fantasy points on DraftKings. Say Toppin, Neesmith get ruled out. Does Jerice Walker become a play for you tonight?
He does because I just like.
Would you rather him or GG? Say Toppin and Neesmith are
out. If Toppin, Neesmith are out, and
they can still go to obviously Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson. Like they could go to other guys in that room.
I would say, fortunately for us, we know we'll have the starting lineup at the exact same time. If Jerice Walker were to start, I would prioritize Jerice Walker over almost anyone. 8th overall pick this year. Super talented kid. Probably should have started the year in the rotation. I would probably find a way to get to both because I think you want to have a lot of wiggle room on this slate to begin with because the Indiana news is so like prevalent. Obviously, that takes away from Washington, New York, or Chicago, Toronto, but you have to make a decision. Like, if you miss out on a TJ McConnell game, that sucks for you because he's going to go for 40 fantasy points if he starts by himself. And so I'd say Jarice, if those guys are out and he was starting, if he's coming off the bench, probably GG, but they're both elite plays. I'd throw one more guy out there, and that is Patrick Baldwin Jr. He has been operating as the team's backup center over the last few games, and Washington just doesn't have anybody. I mean, they've used Kyle Kuzma as a center before, but like you just cannot do that with Hartenstein, right? Like the way he's rebounding. I think he operates as the backup center again tonight. It wouldn't surprise me if him and Bagley were close in minutes. Now Bagley, there's no reason to think like Washington's just like, all right, dude, just get out there and ball. But if he's in foul trouble or if he doesn't know anything what's going on because he's only been there for 2 days or 3 days, like Baldwin, or it's a blowout, like Baldwin has upside. 20 fantasy points in 18 minutes, 17 fantasy points in 13 minutes. So I would take a look at Patrick Baldwin as
just talking about Bagley because he is the highest rostered player on the slate. He's 4K. Yeah, and he's like getting 70% rostership, I think it was.
Yes, he is.
So everybody and their brother is just plugging Bagley either in at center or util here tonight over on DraftKings. Expected to be available, not on the injury report. We expect him likely to start with Daniel Gafford out tonight. So we know what he's capable of doing. Just had 31 minutes here, went 10 of 12. Hartenstein, his matchup tonight, he's not a terribly off. He's not a terrible player. We were crushing on Bagley back in the day when he was on the Kings. He just kept on getting hurt. Maybe some of those injuries have just taken a toll on him. But at 4K on a small slate, looking for some value. If he starts tonight, you're just gonna plug him in and move on.
It feels pretty likely he starts, unless they went like Baldwin, right? Yeah, I'm okay getting to Marvin Bagley as long as he starts eating that chalk and kind of moving on. There's also obviously a scenario where he, again, like is Marvin Bagley, and despite him being a lottery pick, he hasn't found a role on a bad Kings team and didn't find a role on the worst team in the NBA, right? So I think that is also something that you have to take at face value. If you can't find a role in the Detroit Pistons, like what is your standing within the league? So there is obviously things to consider if you're like skeptical of Marvin Bagley in his first game.
I mean, they just had other players there. I mean,
he's a lottery pick. He's
10 years ago.
I don't think it's as long.
Let's see when Bagley was drafted. It feels like forever ago. 2018. So 6 years ago.
Yeah, but like 5 technically because we're in like the 23 season. I'm just saying like.
They've used picks on Duran. They obviously acquired Wiseman, who was a top 3 pick 3 years ago, and they have Isaiah Stewart, who was a lottery pick a couple of years ago. So they just had other guys to play over him. It's just
he didn't put, but he like fell out of the rotation in Sacramento too when they were bad, and then like I'm just saying like I'm not doubting Marvin Bagley, the offensive player. I'm just doubting what people think about Marvin Bagley if he's now on his 3rd team or in 5 years, and could even really play for the Pistons, and whether they had guys or not, like the guys that were in the room, obviously, I mean, weren't really that good because they're not winning games.
I mean, he got minute. Well, I mean, I don't think Jalen Duran's not good. I think there's a chemistry problem probably, but anyway, so he's 4K, he's super chalk. Sabonis is 10K. There's nobody on Indiana that's going to slow him down the way he is going. That's one of the reasons why we're even a bit skeptical in the 8-point spread tonight. with this Indiana-Sacramento game. A lot of it just has to do, I think, in Vegas minds, Sacramento just doesn't play any defense.
Yeah.
Like they will let teams shoot themselves into games here if they don't. I mean, they just blitzed Phoenix the other day and they lost. They were up 40 or 30, whatever it was, in the final third quarter and a half of that game, and they lost. So there's really no lead that's safe. Maybe Indiana being down that many players will be over with, but if this game even stays remotely competitive tonight, you're going to get some big minutes out of Sabonis and likely get yourself a triple-double.
Agreed. We need the game to stay competitive. We need the Indy guys to be in for it to stay competitive. Little revenge narrative as well. If you guys are into the narrative street.
That's why we thought Halliburton was going to suit up, right? Like his return game come against Sacramento. So we've talked a lot of value. You can definitely get the Sabonis on your lineups here tonight. So
I believe that Pacers are on a back-to-back for what that's worth. I don't know if that let's see.
Front leg.
They do play tomorrow.
Sure.
So for what it's worth, they play in Portland tomorrow. So maybe we do see a lot of these guys sit, but 8.5 point spread. These guys sit. It's just not going to be that close.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be interested to see if the line moves at all. We have Sabonis here. Towns at 8K. Holmgren 78. Vucevic, we know we're in on. Our guy Iggy Gilbert took the over Gobert rebounds tonight in his betting article. So some good mid-tier center plays here this evening.
Yeah, I like Vooch. 42 fantasy points per game over his last 5. He's had just one bad game during that stretch against Golden State. Everything else has been a double-double, 36 plus fantasy points. Gobert has been absolutely on a heater with everybody in the lineup. 16, 18, 17, 12, 17, 12 rebounds in the last 6 games. I can see why an over was bet there. Obviously, Minnesota just vastly undersized in the front court. Or Memphis vastly undersized.
They're throwing 6'7" Xavier Tillman out there this evening. Like
in 6'7" on Air Force Ones where you get the thick
the rebound prop I think was 12.5. So he took the over on that one this evening here. Again, this is more so like how long do they play? Do you like Naz Reid if this ends up being a blowout here like tonight? Like what's your take on the Minnesota front court?
I mean, I always like Naz Reid in tournaments, and we know he can go on an absolute heater and break a slate. It's just the Naz Reid price at 5K, where he's power forward center. There's obvious really, really good value potentially on the board with Gigi Jackson, potentially Jarice Walker, Marvin Bagley, Patrick Baldwin. There's a lot of different routes you can go to play. We'll have answers on basically every one of those situations, but we won't know if Memphis doesn't get blown out, Naz Reid plays 23 minutes if both guys stay out of foul trouble. So I'm okay with Naz in tournaments if you're playing multiple lineups, but not going all in on Naz Reid.
Okay. Where else are we going at center tonight?
Hartenstein is okay. I mean, I don't love the price tag, but he continues to be really consistent basically everywhere. And if he scores the basketball, there's a high ceiling. This is a great matchup, obviously, for centers against Washington's front court, who's without Daniel Gafford. Tillman should play big minutes. Jalen Smith should play big minutes if everyone's out. And then it's just taking the value tier and running. Marvin Bagley 4K, Thaddeus Young 39. Thaddeus Young played 28 minutes last night.
Yeah.
Jonte Porter's been in foul trouble early each of the last 2 games that he's played, and then they've just gone to Thad. Or now could they go small and use Scotty Barnes at the 5 today? I don't know. I feel like that wouldn't make a lot of sense against Vooch, but they did it with
we talked about it with Thad. He gets in the game and he's just super active, right?
Yeah,
rebounding, defense has been. When we joked about Thad a couple nights ago, we said he's going to definitely get steals, and it's got to steal an all but one game he's been since he started playing minutes. So, no, I'm with you. I'm with you in both of those spots here. Let's build our lineup here tonight. I imagine we're just plugging Bagley because he's value here, and then Gigi Jackson as well. Guy that we're going to go to for some value tonight. Power forward. What's your next play here? We got 7K to work with per position.
I mean, I want to say Gary Trent. Obviously, the Bruce Brown news, though, just like I think muddies that up a little bit. So someone like Sexton is a really good play. I like if we're going to small forward, I want to play Larry Markkinen. There's a high ceiling there. Man, Toronto with Bruce Brown, I just don't know what to expect with Bruce Brown because he is a guy who has the ball a lot.
I'll put Barrett in still. I still like RJ Barrett here. Barrett had no problem with Siakam on the floor. Can't imagine Bruce Brown as being a problem for RJ Barrett here.
It's not. I'm more so just. I think again. I really think Brown's impact comes to Trent and Schroeder. That's directly where I think takes the biggest hit. Like if Gary Trent's ownership doesn't move, and people just stay on like 50% Gary Trent, then I'm okay like fading that.
I just click some buttons. We can obviously move it around if you want. This is a fair and balanced lineup. Doesn't have Sabonis or SGA in it. Gets Randall. I really like Randall tonight. I can see him having himself a day in this spot. He gets you Laurie. He's got 50 upside. Randall with the 50 upside. It all depends on like what your thoughts are on Memphis versus Minnesota. I think Williams just kind of has to play minutes because they're down on a lot of depth. McConnell obviously is questionable because we don't know on the Nembhard status there, but that's a 6K swap. Could do Nembhard at 58 if you wanted to. Yeah, I know you preferred one against the other there.
I did not include Vince Williams in my player pool today, but
Okay.
I understand getting there. Like he's playing.
I mean, the minutes are ridiculous. I'm a little surprised on not even the player pool.
No, 6,100. I don't think the game stays all that competitive.
Does he come off the floor?
I also don't think he is not like a very good scorer that has had obviously like a really good role the last two games. The usage rate's been really solid over the last two. But he shot 54% and he took 18 free throws. I mean, he had 4 free throw attempts in the last like 6 games combined going into those last
but
two games.
The whole game changed, right? No Bane, no Smart, no Morant. Like
it still doesn't improve. Like it won't improve like your efficiency standpoint. Like he's just not an efficient scorer. So it's fine. Like I'm not saying I wouldn't like. I'm not saying like don't play Vince Williams. I'm just personally saying in my lineup construction I didn't include Vince Williams. I don't. The defensive matchup that he has is obviously not fun.
Sure.
Pace of this game is not really fun. And I don't think he's a 54% shooter when he shot 40% or less this year. I like that he's getting better. Right. 42% over his last 5 games. But he's also
my only counter to that is his prior role was to stand in the corner and shoot threes. Having the ball in your hands a little bit more, you take, like you said, he's getting to the free throw line a lot more. He's probably taking some closer shots to the rim, as opposed to being the 3-and-D guy that they kind of needed him to be with those other guys on the floor. He's still taking threes, obviously, but you can become a bit more efficient when you have the opportunity to be a bit more creative and slash a little bit more to the lane there. So, but I'm fine. Zach LaVine was the other guy we talked about. Do you like LaVine there? Did you like DDR more? Where would you go with the Bulls here tonight?
I like DDR more.
Okay, DDR, that works for me. DeRozan 73, and then we got a guard at 48.
Kind of switch DeRozan with. I think you could put him at power forward because he's in the early game. Switch him with GG.
Okay, DeRozan, Jackson. We got a 48 guard. Obviously, we can move this around if we had to, but Keontae George, Isaiah Joe, Gary Trent, but you're iffy on Trent now, obviously, with that spot.
F, man. Keontae or Trent would probably be the 2 guys at this price tier I'd get to.
Okay. I mean, we can also move off with somebody else down here. Is there anybody in the lineup now that you'd move away from?
No, we could stay like this.
Okay. The George thing really hurts. The Brown thing hurts me with Gary Trent. I think he ends up being the one that gets gets clipped there. So we'll run Keontae George against OKC here. Colin Sexton, RJ Barrett, Lauri Markkanen, DeMar DeRozan, Marvin Bagley, Keontae George, Julius Randle, and GG Jackson there. For example, lineup for tonight. But again, 7:30 roster locks. You get about an hour and a half. Grande's in the Discord will give any updates that need to be done throughout the night and evening here. We'll be back tomorrow. Good luck in all your lineup builds tonight here, and we'll catch you guys later.